Hey, good evening, good evening, good evening. So excited to be here today. Today, we're going to talk all about letters of recommendations. Everything starting from A to Z. Who should you get them from? And is a letter a letter a letter? And what do you have to do to get the strongest letter possible for each of your situations? If you could first please let me know that you can actually hear me and see me okay, I am ready to dive right in. I would appreciate that very, very much. And yeah, thank you for spending your Sunday evenings with me. Appreciate that. And especially if you're on the East Coast, I know that it is pretty late. So thank you for coming. Let's see if anybody let me know. Okay. So yes, thank you for letting me know that my connection is good now. It's the end of March. How are you? Where are you and everything? The LOR is something that, depending on the person, sometimes there are a lot of struggles. Um, because let's say sometimes you have to get the letter. It's not completely in your control, right? Like you ask for somebody and they say okay, or sometimes they're vague about it and you're ready to submit everything else, but the letters aren't coming along, and it's not necessarily something that's on everybody's forefront of their minds when they start. And so often people will start with things like personal statement and figuring out how to write your capit and your CV, and then they just kind of think like, okay, I'll get my LORs from these people, and but then when they actually go to get them, the process takes a lot longer, um, leaving a lot of people in a bit of an unfortunate situation. I see this every single application season. Like everything else is ready to go, but my dean didn't upload my letter yet, all this kind of stuff. But anyway, so I hope nobody here is in that situation, because it really is um, a frustrating and a very unfortunate situation that you just don't have a lot of control over. But let's start from the top. LORs. Okay, so 3 LORs are required for CAPID, right? Like you have to send in 3 that will go to all of the schools that you will apply for. And then there are other letters that some schools allow you to submit separately. And those are additional letters. Not everybody or not every school takes them, but some do. But if you have the opportunity to upload additional letters, great. But first, let's focus on the 3 letters that will be your very, very core letters, those that go everywhere. And those are your dean letter and then 2 more. CAPID doesn't tell you who those letters need to be from. Uh, Right? But, like, you have to decide for your situation, and some schools say, "Please, like, have 1 letter from a faculty and then 1 letter from a dean, and then 1 letter from a work person," or whoever, like, some, um, schools will specify who they want the letters to come from, and some won't. And, so Snehal just sent in a question, "Is it okay to have it from 2 US dentists?" Like, this kind of thing is what a lot of people think about, like, "Oh, is it okay to have the letters come from these people or that people?" Or, like, this kind of thing. Now, I'm gonna say back up a little bit. Back up and look at your candidacy as a whole, okay? First of all, the 1 dean letter is kind of a customary letter. It is expected for everybody to have a letter from the dean, and it is also expected that that letter from the dean is not extremely strong, because the dean doesn't really know you very well. At least in most cases. Like, I've certainly seen some exceptions to this, but in most cases, the deans don't mingle with the students a whole lot. And so, therefore, the dean letter is more like a verification that you were indeed a student there. Sometimes, especially if your GPA is not great because your school was very stringent on giving out good grades, like it is helpful if the dean letter just kind of mentions that you were in the top whatever percentile of your class. That can give the programs you're applying to some context. But beyond that, the dean letter shouldn't really say so and so was exceptional in leadership, and like this kind of stuff they can't really say unless that was you. So let's back up one more step. These letters, it really depends on your personal situation. So I'm talking in generalities here, all in all. And so your specific situation might be a little different, of course. So just in this kind of workshop situation, do hear everything with a little bit of a grain of salt in terms of what I'm saying and things like that. But yeah, so that's the dean letter. And so for CAPIT itself, you basically have two more letters that you can upload, and those will be the letters that carry the most weight, right? Because they are actually being uploaded directly to CAPID from your recommenders instead of, let's say, it being scanned in. Not to say that scanned in papers don't mean anything, they can certainly mean a lot, but it tends to just carry a little bit more weight when the recommendee, the applicant, hasn't seen the letter, or at least when the schools think that the applicant has not seen the letter. Which, if you scanned in the letter yourself, obviously you have seen the letter, and if you are, let's say, still currently working with that person that wrote you the letter, then um, the relationship there's a relationship there. It's somebody you see every day, or have on a regular basis. And um so yeah, that kind of thing, whoever's reading it just might be just a slight more eye of skepticism might go into scrutinizing of the letter. But yeah. Okay, so the two letters, like, who should you get them from, right? And it really, really, really depends. If you are only applying to a few schools, which I am not a fan of doing that, but sometimes people do it anyway. So if you are doing that, and there seems to be a theme in terms of who the recommender, who the programs say they want the recommendations to come from, then follow that. But for a lot of people, that's kind of applying on a more broad basis. um you don't have that, right? Like, you have to choose, and that might not meet the criteria for all of the schools, but then you would send in letters directly, or try to arrange something like that, or scan in additional letters to CAPID. That would help you meet that criteria for who the program wants the letters to actually come from. So, what kind of letter carries weight? First of all, letters from the US do carry more weight than letters from abroad, just generally speaking. And this is because programs do know that recommendation letters are a American thing, or North American thing, I should say. It's not it's not part of the culture or the academic culture of most countries that the international dentists are coming from. And therefore, they are very, very aware that often letters that are supposedly coming in from abroad are actually written by the applicant or some similar situation. And therefore, but like in America, letters are a thing, and it's taken a lot more seriously by recommenders, and therefore more thought goes into actually writing the letters. And so, because of that, the US letters carry more weight than letters from abroad. That does not mean that you should only get letters from the US people, because another thing to really consider, there's lots of things to consider, but another one more factor to consider is what kind of relationship did you have with that person? Generally speaking, okay, what are programs wanting to know about you through the letters, right? Like, why are they even asking for these things? Well, programs are trying to evaluate you based off of your application papers, right? They don't get to meet you, they don't have a relationship with you. And so, what the letters of recommendations are designed to do is hear from somebody that has worked with you for a good amount of time in an involved manner, um, and hear what that person's experience was working with you. Like, that are just trying to get a glimpse of that, trying to see, like, okay, if I, let's say, accepted this person into the program and they're here for 2 years and then they will carry my school's name for the rest of their career, they want to bring in good people, moral people, like, just people that would be good dentists, people that could follow through with the curriculum, but also have integrity and all this. So they're trying to get a glimpse into what kind of person you are through the words of somebody else. And so, if you've shadowed a dentist for 2 months, how much can that dentist really say this person is excellent? Versus if you worked as somebody's assistant for 2 years, that person, if you worked with somebody, you worked as an assistant for 2 years to the same dentist, that dentist would be able to write a letter that is so much stronger than the person that you've shadowed for 2 months. And even if it's the same duration, shadowed versus assisted, like when you assist, you're working a lot more closely with that person versus shadowing. You're supposed to not really intrude on the daily operations, right? Like, you're supposed to kind of stand back. And so the only times you really get to interact with the dentist would be in between patients or during lunchtime or something like that, which is not a whole lot of time. And so, you have to think about like this kind of stuff, like who can really, who did I go through a lot with, and who can really vouch for me, who really believes in me. Um, just one moment. So oftentimes candidates, let's say, do have a lot of choices that they could make, like a faculty from your home country versus a shadowing dentist versus a dentist that I worked with before versus a dentist that I'm working with now versus an organization that I'm volunteering with now or volunteered with before. All these things come in, and it's just like, okay, well, like, who am I supposed to ask? Like, if you've done a master's program, like a faculty from the master's program, maybe like you've got involved in some research while you were here, maybe some of that. There's just a lot of things you have to think about. And when it is a situation like that, first think about that part. Who can really vouch for me strongly? Like, who did I go through a lot with? So, if you went through a master's, like if you did something significant, like going through a master's program that's like 2 years long, you do need to have a letter from that faculty. Like, you really should have it. Unless you somehow like really think you're not going to get a good letter, which I hope you didn't. You should have done a good job while you were in the master's program, right? And when you have significant, it's like a program that was recent, that was long in length, that was involved, that was maybe not fully full time, but fairly pretty much something that we can call full time, you're expected to send in a letter from that person. So if you've done that, please do reserve one letter from your master's degree, somebody from your program that has seen you improve. That is the best thing. Somebody that has seen you go from here to here, that has watched you or pushed you through that or assisted you through, like this kind of like saw your, let's just say, hero's journey. If they saw that, that's excellent. Or somebody that can really say, yes, by having so and so in my office or as my student or whatever, it really has been an asset to me. I'm so glad, like, she or he was much more of an asset than somebody else likely would have been. Because let's say if you're, it says like a dental office kind of situation, that dentist has worked with a lot of assistants, right? So you want them to be really saying things like, "Oh yeah, like having Snehal in my office was really much better than the other assistants that usually come and stay. Like this was so much better." If you have somebody like that, those will come off as stronger letters. Like if you really were an asset to somebody, you're all humans. So if you're an asset to somebody, they will kind of feel, it's not like indebted isn't exactly the right term, but kind of. They kind of feel this like, oh yeah, I need to give back because she's been so good to me. Like and this is one way that she really needs this from me, so I can do this. So yeah, that is something that is really good. So you want to think about it like that. And another thing that you could consider, I'd say this is a slightly more edge case, but let's say if you want to be an oral surgeon and you have a recommendation letter from an oral surgeon, that's helpful, right? And then sometimes people ask like, "Oh, like should this faculty or like, like names, like name dropping, like big people with, let's say, big names in the US, like is that helpful?" And the answer is yeah, it can be. It can be helpful. So there are just a lot of things to balance. So I guess the very first takeaway that you really should have is that generally speaking, there's no one right answer here. Like, it's a very, like, because like in the ideal world, if you could, you would get letters from everybody and you would send them all in, but CAPID restricts it to 3. So now we're having to choose, and depending on what criteria we weigh a little bit more heavily over the others, our choice goes from this person to that person. But it it doesn't mean that there's a right or a wrong, but what we're trying to do is optimize it for the most number of programs to be intrigued in us, right? That's kind of your goal. Now, one thing you can do, because what you do not want is a lukewarm letter. A lukewarm letter can come from a dean. That's okay. That's kind of I shouldn't say a throwaway letter, but it kind of is. It's weird if a dean's letter is really vouching for you. The dean usually isn't involved in the day-to-day student teachings. They're involved in, I don't know, they do their own thing, right? So yeah, they really shouldn't know of all the students' names and all the details and all the volunteer activities you've done. Like they don't know, and they shouldn't know. It's not their job. So we have that. But the other two, you really do not want a lukewarm letter if you can avoid it. Like if you really don't have choices, like your experience list is short and you have what you have and you've just got to do it, then yeah. But if you can really choose, if you're kind of in a position where you have to decide who to ask, then you want the letter to be strong. And just because you think that that person will really vouch for you, it doesn't necessarily always mean that that person really will. So these are kind of unfortunate situations, but it always happens, right? When two people are having a relationship, um, two people are not always on the same page. Not they rarely are. So meaning this, like, let's just say I have an assistant that she thinks she's doing an amazing job with me, but I don't really think so. And I think she's just average. right? And if she asks me for a letter, I probably say yes. But is my letter going to be really strong? Am I going to really vouch for her in that letter? No, I can't because I don't feel so. I won't say she's average, but I'll be more general. I won't have the same passion in my letter writing than I would if like my best assistant comes and be like, okay, I really like, can you really help me here? I'd be like, oh yeah, like I will help you. Like, come here, let's figure out how to do this, you know? That's different. But just because you think you've done amazing does not necessarily mean the other person really thinks that you've done amazing. And you can't ask, right? Like you can't be like, hey, if you wrote me a letter, would you be really, really strongly vouching for me? Like you can't ask that either. It's just not an okay thing to ask. So here's a bit of a workaround that you can do. You can write an email. And this works best if the relationship has already ended. So if it's a faculty from your home country, an employer from your home country, or a previous employer that maybe you had to stop working with because of COVID, whatever, like, I don't know. Or, you know, a faculty in your master's program where you have more than one person that you think could write a good letter for you and you just don't know who to actually get it from. And you're done with your master's program, you can write them an email and say, like, look, I've really enjoyed my time with you. I'm now applying. Um, and I was wondering if you would be, um, if you were to write me a recommendation letter, I was wondering if you could be, if that letter, if you would be able to strongly back me or strongly vouch for me in that letter. And if your answer is no, I completely understand. Just please don't respond to this email then. Like you're giving them an out, right? Because if you ask them, like, oh, will you write me a letter? Yes, they'll say yes. Will it be a strong letter? If you just ask like that, they'll probably say, oh, yeah, because they're never going to say in your face, like, no, I can't write you a strong recommendation. Like, it's just American people are too polite for that. It's not that culture. It'll just be in the final product. It will just be a lukewarm letter. And it's very obvious when you read a lot of letters, like which ones are passionately like, oh my God, I really vouch for this person versus which one is like, yeah, I guess she was at my office and she was fine, kind of thing. Those become pretty obvious if you just read 10 letters, that's pretty obvious. It's not hard to discern because the strong letters are rare. You would think that they are common. They're not that common. They're rare. So that's why when you come across one, it really stands out. So you want to get to as close to that as possible and with both if possible. So if you write them an email with the way out and just see if they respond back to you or not. And if they respond to you, then I would trust that that letter would be pretty strong. And if they don't respond to you, just it's a bummer, right? It's not what you hoped, but it is what it is. And you go from there. And if you have a lot of people that responded to you, or at least more than two, let's just say, with a yes, I will write you a strong letter, then now is the time to decide who you want that letter from and basically who you want to apply directly, upload the letters directly to Capit versus who you want to receive a PDF from, because you do not want to reveal that information up front, because a PDF means that you're the second tier recommender versus the top tier recommender. And everybody wants to be in the top tier, especially if they're pouring their heart into the letter, which people will do if you have been a strong asset to them. They will really work on the letter. Letters are not easy to write. You really have to, no writing is easy to do. You really have to think, and it takes a lot of mental capacity and all that. But when you're putting that in, you're assuming that your letter is going to be a very important one for your application, or your recommendee's application. So you don't want to give that information up front. You want that them to know that later. And now is the time that you decide, okay, these people, I want them to upload the letters directly, and these people, I'll just get it as a PDF that I could either upload, or if the school allows for it, I will ask them either for like a few sealed copies. Some people can do that. What they do is they will usually type up, right? Nobody really writes letters anymore. So they'll type up the letter on a paper with a letterhead. It really should have a letterhead. Yeah. And then they will sign it with their actual signature on the bottom, fold it up and putting in an envelope, seal the envelope, and you will sign across that seal again. So that's how basically it means that this letter was not opened. And if you have that, now you can even physically mail out to schools, because there are schools that will take letters that way. Yeah, so you can do that. You can just ask for, 10 of those, just so you have it, and then use a few. And if there's more than you need, then whatever, that's fine. Okay, so let me take a break right here and look at the question. So, um, is it okay to have it from two US dentists? I'm working with them since 2 years. Snehal, I hope I've given you enough for you to reflect on. Yeah, it is okay. What I don't know is that the best for you in your situation? I do not know. But, like if you ask, like, is it okay to have it in any combination? My answer would be like, oh yeah, it is okay. Like, is it okay to have it from two faculties from my dental school? Like, it is okay. Like, I just don't know if that's the best for you. So I can't give that advice because I just don't know. But, like, is it okay? Yeah, it's okay. Um, then, like, please do look at the schools that you're applying to. And when you do not meet the recommended guidelines for the recommenders from a program, reach out to them and ask if you could send in letters directly to them, or if like how to, if they can help you meet that criteria, because you're very, very interested in attending their school, kind of thing. As you mentioned, the dean doesn't really know us personally, so there's really not a lot of content. Is there a minimum word count for their letter? No, it's up to the dean. Technically, this letter is supposed to come from the dean themselves, and if they said, "I recommend Aishwara," like if that's all they write, then oh well, that's a bummer, but that's all you get. So no, but it's usually very short, like one paragraph. So, if you get a short letter from the dean and you're freaked out, don't freak out. Like, it's so very common. They usually, a lot of school deans would just have a template that they use anytime a student or a past student asks them for a recommendation letter for anything. They just send out the template and just fill in the blanks, basically. That would say she was a student from this year to this year, whatever. It's just a very, very generic content. But no. And this is a letter, right? Like, there isn't like, it's not like your SOP where it has like a minimum word count. Like, letters don't really have that. That being said, the custom is for the letter to fit in one page, to one letter size piece of paper, with the font size not being too tiny. You do want to think about that, because a lot of people need reading glasses, and so you do want it to not to be too difficult to read, that kind of thing. But if your letter is going to go beyond a page, it can, but there better be a good reason for that. Like, really, like, it has to be a situation where I just have so much to say about this person, where I just cannot, there's no way I'll fit it in one page, therefore I'm going long. I have seen letters like 3 pages long. I have seen that. And you can tell when you get a letter like that, that really was a letter that somebody had poured their heart and soul into, right? And yeah, when I read it, it was a good reason for that. So it does happen. But generally, if you're working as a dental assistant, or, it will just fit in one page. It'll just say nice things about you and whatever. I'll talk about the content in a moment. Let me answer this one more question, and then yeah, let's get into the content. Is that okay? The professor who wrote the second letter for me moved to the other university. Yeah. I mean, the person that recommended you knows you based off of their previous experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be, people move around jobs and stuff. That's okay. Yeah, that's fine. If you have control of the content, I would include in the content that that faculty used to be at, your school, your alma mater, and that you were a student while that faculty was there, just to clear any confusion. But the letterhead would probably be in the new school's letterhead, and if that confusion is cleared up there, like totally nothing wrong with that at all. Okay, now two scenarios, right? Sometimes you write the letter and they will either edit it or just sign off on it. And sometimes they write the letter from scratch. How do we get the best letter that we can? So let's talk about the first case scenario where you do not have control of the letter content. They say they will write the letter. Okay. What do we do in this case? It's not nothing. You do not just say, okay, thank you so much. Here's the email, or here are the instructions on how to do it. Like, no, 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 no. You can't leave it like that. You are the one that remembers much more than they do, or at least you should assume. Like, you cannot assume that they remember whoever your recommender is. You cannot assume that that person remembers all of the things that you were helpful for, that you really contributed to, all the projects you were involved in, all of those things. You can't assume that they remember. So you want to help them. And really, I say this as somebody that sometimes needs to write letters myself. It is like my heart is there, right? Like, I want to write this person a good letter, but it's like, okay, where do I start? Like, writing is like a daunting task for anybody. And let's for you, it is your application, it is your job to do so. Your recommender is doing you a favor. And so they're not going to, yeah, they don't remember everything, but also it's kind of your job, if you want the best letter possible, to help them. You want to nudge them in the right direction. Just remind them of some writing material. So this is what you want to do. You want to print out your CV and highlight a few things that is relevant to them that they should probably know. Just, like, get, like, literally just use a highlighter and be like, okay, I graduated from my dental school in whatever country in this year. And then, like, I came to your office, and then, like, whatever, just highlight those things. And it's also helpful for them to see the description you wrote for your CV for their office. So do that. And then, either on another page or on the same paper, whatever, you can type out or write out a bullet list of things that you did with that person that you wish they remembered. Maybe if this was maybe for a faculty, the time when you really pulled through and rallied a group and worked as a leader for your group's team project, and you were that team lead. And yeah, and you demonstrated effective leadership there. Maybe for this one class, before you got a B, and then the next semester you got A. Like, so you shows improvement. Maybe your English really improved throughout the course of 2 years, and you just want to remind them of that. Or maybe if you were an assistant, like, there was a time that you talked a patient, you spent so much time with the patient that you were able to help them basically go through with the treatment that they were thinking not to do. Or maybe you uh, saw some inefficiencies in the office and brought some recommendations in um, on how to do better. Whatever, any contributions that you've done or work that you've done, you just want to remind them these are the things that happened thanks to me, because they may not remember. So really do that, and also if and then you're just going to like let them know, like you just don't just give them paper. Just get a folder. Get a folder, put your CV in and that in just so that it doesn't they don't have to crinkle it to, keep it, and just give it to them that way. And you know what? They'll be like, "Oh, look at her. Look how prepared she is." And also very thankful. Like most people don't do that, and if you go that extra step, I promise you your letter would be better for it. You would get a better letter for it. Now, that's that. Now, if you have control of the letter and you're writing it because they want you to, they're going to just sign off on it, then you would brainstorm all of the things that you did, similar to how you wrote out the bullet points, and then you would write it. Now, when you write your letter, do not be general. Let's say, just a simple example, um, leadership. So and so was in my master's program in this class. She demonstrated effective leadership qualities throughout the 2 years. Means nothing. It has to be followed up by, for example, there was this group project that we did and where she really stepped up and they produced the best project of all of the classes, or something like that. It has to be followed up with specifics. It's like, prove it to me, show me. Show me in words or show me in stories. If it's lacking stories, any general statement you make, and this goes the same with anything you write, essays, whether it's the SOP or the supplementals, whatever. If you're going to write a general statement like, I am a hardworking person, which I hope you don't write because everybody writes that. But anyway, if you're going to write something like that, back it up. Don't ever leave a general statement hanging because that means nothing. Anybody can write that. And if it's not proven and there's just nothing there. A better would be like, either back it up with a story or don't even write the general statement, just write stories. Like, this is some things that happened with her. And through the stories, you're basically demonstrating or illustrating the qualities of the recommendee. Yeah. So that's how you want to approach it. One more thing that you could think about is, okay, what are all of the qualities about me that I want the admissions committee to know about? Maybe I take initiative. Maybe I'm a really good, compassionate listener. Um, uh, Maybe I have really good dexterity that is just outstanding. Whatever it might be, think about those things and then you go back to like, all right, who from all these people that could recommend me um, can right for me in that way? Like, who can vouch for, let's say, my dexterity? And please only do this if your dexterity is outstandingly excellent. And by definition, that is only 1% of anybody. But if you are that, then do play that card. And maybe because of that, um, if you are like an assistant that can make temporaries, then maybe you could do that. Or if you're not, then you'll have to go back to your faculty, right? So really, or like just really think about like, okay, who can write about that quality of mine that I want the school to know? So there are lots of things that you can take into consideration here to come up with the two best possible letters that would help you shine as the candidate. Okay, and let me go back to the questions again. Is it okay? Like, my dean was in India, but now he lives in the USA and doesn't work. Well, there should be a dean that is currently in your school. I would actually think that that person is the person to write your letter, not the dean not the person that was in school when you were actually in school, because the person that was in school, like the dean that was the dean when you were in school, doesn't remember you and really shouldn't even have access to. Like, this is dean's duty. Writing this dean's letter is dean's duty. It lands on the current dean's shoulder, not the and the current dean doesn't even have to say that they you were. I mean, they can, if they insist, they can include that part. Like, I was not the dean when Kieran went through my dental school, but like they can write it if they really insist, but that part is not essential even. As I said, they usually have a template that they just pull from, and it's just fill in the blank. And if they don't like that it's a recommendation letter, just say a reference letter, just a letter that explains that I was in school. And if you're a good student, then you can ask to include your percentile, or, if you have really big highlights, or if you graduated with honors, then that can be included in that letter, but that's about it. Mm. And yes, you absolutely want the letters to be on the letterheads. People that graduated a long time ago have some more decisions to make, right? This person asks, like Saf is asking, what is a better choice for someone who graduated 10 years ago, as some schools are asking for one faculty and one US dentist? Which is the best choice, two US dentists or one faculty plus one US dentist? So I don't know, Seth, if you were here from the very beginning of the workshop, if you missed the beginning parts on how to discern who to get your letters from, go back and listen to that part. I would lean more towards people that you worked with and exclude the faculty, because the probability of somebody remembering, like a faculty that when you were in dental school, remembering all the details from what you've done together when you were a student is very low. Therefore, the letter kind of just becomes generic unless you were so outstanding that in the 10 years, there's no way they forgot all about you. Most people are not that, right? Like, I was not that. So if you were one of the majority students, I'll just assume that you are, then I would just go for people that make more sense for you to vouch for you. But then you can get the faculty letter and then reach out to the schools that you'll be applying to that asks for a faculty letter, and send those in separately. But you want your CAPIT applications to overall have the letters that would best support you, and just don't look at those requirements in the beginning, because you really want those letters to be strong, and a lot of schools don't specify the letters. UP requires only 2 letters. Should we use one from the US, 1 year dental assistant experience, and one from the dean, or one for associate dentist experience? Okay, if nothing is specified that a dean's letter is required, then ditch the dean's letter and go for your letters that actually could vouch for you. And I do not know, Miriam, about your background enough okay, I should just say this now. I cannot answer this for anybody. Should it be from a 1 year dental assisting experience, or should it be from an associate? I cannot answer this for anybody because it is too generic, right? You are the only one that knows. Okay, because I have assistants, they're all different. If one assistant asks for another assistant asks for a letter, they've only both been with me for a year, my letter would be different. And so just because you worked for a year does not mean I just do not know what kind of contributions you've brought to the office to be able to say what letter would be a stronger choice for you. This is something that you have to do yourself, or if you really want to sit down with me and dig in and discuss with me, like, this is what I did there, or this is what I think, then we'll have to sit down for a consulting session. When you're done, I'll speak one for the dean, but yeah, I would generally exclude the dean. Kiran, you said the dean came after I left the college. And he didn't know me at all. I've addressed that in my comment to you. If a friend is going to start the BU program in July, can she write a letter and use the letterhead from VB? Oh, you mean can a student write you a recommendation letter from a letterhead? Oh, I wouldn't go there. Um, yeah, I would not go there. It's just you want the person writing the letter to be able to professionally vouch for you, and that is not a classmate or a friend, usually speaking. And especially a current dental student is not who you want the letter from. You want it from an employer or teacher kind of figure. What can a recommender include in their letter after having me to shadow them for just 6 weeks? That's why shadowing letters cannot be very strong, Shravani. Um, so this is not the best of letters you can get. If this is the only choice you have, then I mean, by definition, you haven't really contributed to the office, or 6 weeks, you haven't been through a lot together, like you haven't overcome difficulties together, like you just couldn't have, right? So all they can really say is she seems professional. From the conversations she's had with me or we've had, she seemed very knowledgeable, very passionate, and eager to get back. But that dentist really can't say that, like, they can generally say, therefore, I recommend Shravani for your program. They can go there, but that letter, everybody knows. I mean, like, because in the letter, they also have to write about the capacity in which they know you. And if it just says, oh, she's shadowed here, it's very obvious that, like, okay, like she shadowed here versus like, oh, she assisted me for the past year. Like that letter already carries a different level of weight. But there's just not a whole lot, but that's just how you have to do it. And if that's all you've got, then that's all you've got. You just have to work with what you've got, but not a strong letter. So in that case, I would really work on the other letter, whatever that other letter is for you. And okay. If you have any other questions about recommendation letters, now is the time to put it in. Um, I wanted to just kind of share with you a totally unrelated um, piece of, let's just say, piece of information that has come to me in the last week, just because I was so very disturbed by hearing about it. And just in case any of you were wondering what this all was about or whatever, like if you are part of any of the Facebook Capit groups, you've probably seen the posts where people are saying, hey, you want research experience? Like I can get you published. Message me, right? Well, I just had a consulting session with somebody that had contacted that person thinking that what was going to happen was assuming that she would be involved in an actual research project. Like she would be asked to do work and, do some things, and then she would get her name included because she has done some work. But instead, what happened, and I do not know if this was an isolated incident, that I cannot speak to. But instead, what happened, at least in her case, was that she was asked to spend in money, which was not an insignificant amount. And then when she asked on what to do, she did not get a response. And then later, finally, she was just told that her name was included in the publication, but she hadn't done anything about it. She knew nothing about the paper, nothing at all. And she was asking me, should she include this in her CV or not? And it's a very unfortunate situation because she basically spent close to $1,000 and did not get what she thought she was going to get. Like it's just very, very, very unethical to do that. So this is what I told her at the end of that, is that if you don't mind lying about every single thing, starting from how you came across the research project to what you've done in the research project, what the other people did, what your role was, how long you've been involved in it, what kind of work you did, and what you think about the conclusions and just everything. If you're not ready to totally fabricate stories around every single part of that and just be so well prepared to lie about every single part of it, don't include it, because it can be asked during an interview. Not necessarily because they're doubting you, but because they're wondering, like when they do an interview, they look at your profile and they ask you questions that they're curious about. And especially if you sit down with somebody that, let's just say the study was in pedo, and you happen to be being interviewed by a pediatric dentist, that person will very likely be interested in whatever study you did that's, related to her field. And if she senses a lie or, something like that during the interview, you're out. You have lost your choice chance completely. So now then comes to the question of like, well, but if I didn't have that, I had no research experience at all. Like, what am I supposed to do if I had no research experience? Research it's okay. It can be okay. Not everybody has to have every single column of CAPID ticked off. This depends on your candidacy, right? This really is candidacy building. You need to look at your candidacy in a more holistic manner. It is much more holistic matter than a check mark here. Oh, I did that. I assisted for a year and I did a research over there and I did a preceptorship over there and I did a volunteering over here. I'm good. I'm done. It's so much more than this. That if like I can understand why out of desperation, you would want to, and like you're like, oh my God, I really want to get involved in a research study because that's what people say I need to do. And you see this Facebook post that says, oh, just message me if you want to be involved in a research project. I don't think there are that many people that can intelligently pull off that lie, to be completely honest with you. I really don't. I think you're risking a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a blacklist that is shared across programs. Like, this is an unethical person, or this person tried to pull a trick on me, warning kind of thing, like across the schools. I don't know if that exists, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. And I wouldn't risk it. It's like you're risking everything because you want to make sure you have a published paper. Spend that time and money elsewhere. And if you don't know what to do because you feel completely lost, then have a sit down conversation with me. Is it paid? Yes, you do pay for it. You do pay for an hour of my time. But at least you will be able to get a good sense of where you are at with everything and what it is that you really need, if anything at all, to strengthen your application, that actually in a way that makes more sense, and how to present you as a candidate in general. Because that candidate that talked to me, her profile did not need research at all. Like, even if she actually had published her research paper, I don't think it would have made a big difference in her profile. Like, she had other things. The problem with her was that she didn't know that she had those other things. She didn't know that those experiences of her past counted for anything in her application, but it was everything. Um, and so, yeah, I know I'm speaking very vaguely. I can't really get too specific because it's an applicant of this current year and privacy and whatnot. But just my heart went out for her when I talked to her about it. And when she brought this up during our session, I was just like, oh my God, that is just so horrible and just so unethical. And that is for me at least, I don't know if the people that are posting that are actually thinking that they are helping the international dentists. I don't think that they are. I think this is really, really bad. And yeah, it just isn't worth it. I don't know. I don't know about your risk tolerance, but in my book, that crosses the line of risk tolerance, and it is not needed. That's the thing. Like, if there was one thing that you could do to really make you from, let's just say, an undesirable candidate to desirable candidate, um, it's usually not going to be just one paper and just like, and it's published where? Look at that. Look at that. Anyway, I just wanted to share that story with you because it's still so fresh on me and I'm still upset about it, to be honest. Because this for me, this is the definition of taking advantage of people without really, I mean, if you can get involved, even if you pay for it, if you can get involved and actually do the work and actually get involved, then by all means do it. But if you are paying money and then you're not getting any involvement and then you're just getting your, you know nothing about the project, you know nothing about who the head is, like you have to start from researching, okay, what is the background of this person that is leading this research project, right? Like you need to know all the things about this and be prepared to talk about everything. And yeah, I just don't think, I don't think that is a necessary place for you to go to do anything. So that's just, I don't know. I don't know if any of you are considering doing that or whatever. I just hope that you know what it is about. Okay. I just have one more question. Do schools call or emails the contacts on your CV? They can. They can. It's not super common practice for them to do so, but they can. Uh, yeah, so I wouldn't assume that they wouldn't, but at the same time, you don't have to tell everybody to expect a call. Um, yeah, because like if anything smells fishy enough for them to actually contact somebody in the before they actually like in do interview calls, then they'd just probably toss your application to the no pile. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, like 'cause that's a lot of work. Um, if they're considering taking you in and they just want to verify one thing, then maybe that's a different story. But if they're just wondering whether to interview or not, and if anything comes across fishy in your documents or just something is incongruent, you're just gonna get tossed to the you're not gonna get your papers are just not gonna get tossed into the yes pile or yeah, you know, like let's invite this person for an interview pile. They have plenty of applicants that in their mind look more congruent and strong and all of that so that they could potentially bring in. So I think I covered everything that I needed to make sure that I wanted to make sure I talk about with you today. And yeah, that's it. Best of luck with all of your applications and everything. Okay, one more question came in. We'll address this one. Can a doctor that you worked with in your country write a letter instead of a professor of a university? Yes, I'm not sure if you were here from the beginning of the workshop, but there's no right or wrong person to write you a letter. You have to think about who can really write you the strongest letters and start from there. But that doctor that you worked with, that letter would not be a professor's letter. Therefore, if you're applying to a school that requires a professor's letter, the professor letter would have to be submitted separately to that school. Um, but yeah, there is no um, instead here, right? You're choosing a doctor you worked with instead of a professor. And sometimes that is the right choice. So, yeah, this just really think through your candidacy yourself. Um, like, it's not like, is it okay to do this or is it okay to do that? Don't get swayed by that. Um, because most of the time there's no right or wrong way to do it. And the most strategically, there is a way that makes the most sense strategically, but those decisions cannot be made by you sharing one or two sentences about yourself or even one or two paragraphs about yourself and your candidacy. Things get lost. Things get lost, and it does not include everything. Okay. I'm not sure. I'm being very vague here, but that candidate that I shared with you that had that issue with that, issue with that, what is that? That published paper with her name on it, um, had a similar experience with a professionally edited personal statement as well. It was done. She paid for it, and it was an average SOP, but she came to us and she's redoing it from scratch again because it left out the most important part of her and her candidacy, and it just wasn't there. It wasn't strong. But yeah, those kind of nuances, to find that, to dig it out of your past, requires talking. We found that after an hour. So, you know, so in terms of like who should write you letters, like I can't answer who it should be for any one of you in this setting, just because I do not know the nuances of your situation. Everybody has nuances. Even if you think your background is straightforward, there's usually nuances that you didn't even know were there. So just and I know it's hard to think through like that coming in as an internationally trained dentist, because it's nothing like what we've done in our home countries. It is so very different. So you have to completely shift the frame of your thinking, because, like, there's things that you know, and then there's things that you don't know. But then there's a huge category of things that you don't know that you don't know. And does that make sense? Like, there's like, if there are all the things in the world, there's a little pie that you know, and then there's a pie, probably bigger, that you don't know. But then there's all this rest that you don't know, but you don't even know that you don't know it. It's just not in your psyche at all. So it's missing. Applications is in that area. And yeah, so it's good to just acknowledge that and try to look at it from a fresh perspective. Sitting down with somebody that really knows this well, that can like show you where you're at and like kind of explain things, would be very eye-opening. It would probably save you from getting lost in the process, um, because they're chasing this direction and that direction, and like, just like, oh, she said add this experience, and oh, that person said go get research experience, and oh, that person, I'm supposed to get a preceptorship, and oh, do I need a master's now? Like, just chasing all these different directions. um Not necessary. Not necessary. But that requires some strategic thinking about your candidacy. So yeah, that's that. Thank you so much for coming, especially if you're on the East Coast. I know it's super late. But yes, that's that. I will see you next week, same time again. And if there are any topics that you would like me to talk about, you can email me at mail@internationaldentistcentral.com. I will put that in the chat. If there's anything that you want me to talk about, let me know what it is, and we go from there. Okay. Well, have a great rest of your night. Best of luck with applications. And I really do wish you the best of luck with all of the things, because there's so many steps involved. All of the things. Best of luck and good night. Bye.